The starting gun has been fired. The coalition has drawn an electoral line in the sand with its budget reply, pledging to slash permanent migration to 140,000 a year. Someone who has been very vocal about the consequences of a big Australia is MacroBusiness co-founder Leith van Onselen. He joins me now. Leith, good to see you. So Peter Dutton has pledged to slash permanent migration by 25%. What do you make of that figure? Is it realistic?
Yeah, look, I think it's actually a good move. So Peter Dutton said he's going to reduce the number of permanent migrants from 185,000 planned for this financial year to 140,000 for 2 years, 150,000 in year 3 and 160,000 year 4. Look, the cuts are obviously worthwhile, but in my view, they should be even lower. I think they should be closer to 120,000. It's very important to recognise that in the 60 years post-World War II, before this whole big Australia policy came into effect, Australia's average net overseas migration was only 90,000 a year, versus it then went up to 220,000 a year in the 15 years leading up to the pandemic, and obviously we saw the blowout to 550,000 last year. The other thing is Dutton's also said very little about curbing temporary migration, other than that he thinks that the international student numbers are too high and should be capped. So, look, it definitely is a big improvement, but immigration's still going to remain historically high under Peter Dutton, but it's a much, much bigger improvement versus the status quo.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a welcome cut, a welcome policy, given that Australia cannot continue on its current trajectory. And you and I have spoken at length about this before. We know that current migration numbers are propping up the economy. So could a lower migration figure impact negatively on the economy? I mean, how do we strike the right balance here?
Well, I guess it depends on how you measure the economy. So if you measure the economy as a single entity, as one economic pie, yes, lower migration will impact it in aggregate sense. Obviously, more people means a bigger economy and stronger GDP, but that's not the way we should measure the economy. We should be measuring the economy in per capita share, so what everyone's slice of the economic pie is. And lower immigration, certainly won't negatively impact that. I'd argue that it'll actually improve living standards and per capita GDP growth. And one of the reasons for that is because infrastructure, business investment and housing will be better placed to keep up with population growth with lower levels of immigration. So ultimately, we'll be better off.
The key question, Leith, is this sort of level of migration going to be enough to actually help ease the housing crisis in this country?
Yeah, I think they need to be a little bit lower. So I still think with that level of migration that Dutton's proposing, it'll still be too high. We know that that there's research that's come out from the Reserve Bank of Australia, from the Federal Treasury, and it shows that basically Australia's housing crisis began in 2005 when we ramped immigration, and under Peter Dutton's proposed figures, although they're a massive improvement, they're still going to be historically high. So we're going to still have a similar sort of problem.
And even in Labor's budget, there was an entire section on meeting Australia's housing challenge. Now, it admits that Australia's housing supply has not kept up with population growth, yet it's blaming supply. Do you agree?
Look, they always do this, and RBA Assistant Governor Sarah Hunter gave a speech yesterday which said exactly the same thing. As usual, both the Reserve Bank and Treasury refuse to admit that immigration levels have been far too high, even though they acknowledge that we haven't built enough homes to keep up. Now, that there is the fundamental problem. So under the intergenerational report's projections, Australia's population is tipped to grow by 13.5 million people in only 39 years, Danica. Now, to put that into perspective, that's the equivalent of adding another Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane to Australia's population in only 39 years. Now, there is simply no way that Australia can build enough high-quality housing and infrastructure to accommodate such a population explosion. So immigration simply must be slowed to a level below the nation's ability to build homes and infrastructure. Otherwise, the housing crisis is going to keep getting worse. And unfortunately, none of this is rocket science. Every viewer watching this understands this to be true. Yet the Treasury and the RBA continually avoid the most obvious and low-cost solution to Australia's housing crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And meanwhile, Australians are struggling to find a rental or struggling to get into the housing market. Leith van Onselen, always great to speak with you.